Welcome back to the Weekly Encouragement. And as you probably saw in the title, we are having Will Galkin on with us this week to talk about apologetics. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you know we love talking about apologetics. So I'm glad Will came on with us to talk more about it with us. So, how are you today?
Oh, great. Thanks so much, Andrew.
I'm glad to have you on here. So to kind of get to know each other a little bit, what is your favorite Bible verse or quote that's your favorite?
That's a great question. I am presently working my way through Psalm 119, and I'll grab it so I can add to what we're speaking about. But in Psalm 119, 33 through 40, it's got the first word of each of the verses is actually, an imperative. It's a prayer. Teach me, O Lord, give me understanding, lead me in the path. But I like verse 36 right now. I'm thinking about incline my heart to your testimonies and not to selfish gain. And just praying the Lord would give me a heart for his word and not for things that just advance my kingdom, but things that advance his kingdom.
Yeah, I like that. And if you could have any superpower, what would it be?
If I could have any superpower, well, that's often debated. Like usually it comes down to would you fly or would you be invisible? And I think I'd take invisibility.
Hmm. I would be able to fly just because I'm really lazy. I like to get from point A to point B faster without having to walk or drive.
That's great.
And so let's just dive right in. So, what do you do at Gospel Grace Church currently?
Yeah, so I am actually 50% at Gospel Grace, 50% missionary to churches in Utah. So my role at Gospel Grace is I'm the church planting pastor. And so I am presently helping Gospel Peace Church get started by, like, for example, this morning at 6:30, got up and got with the guys that are going to be launching this church later this year. And we just talked through an evangelism strategy. So I have some roles of evangelism, discipleship at Gospel Grace, and then really a church planting catalyst with the rest of our time.
Okay. Speaking of church planting, I'm actually going to be at Gospel Grace for plant camp in
Well, that's
July.
right.
So
How are
I'm
you?
really looking forward to that.
Which church are you based out of?
Boones Creek Bible Church in Johnson City.
Wonderful. That's great. Yeah, we're looking forward to having you out.
I'm looking forward to going. And why did you pursue a degree in apologetics?
So I traveled many years in evangelism, and our culture has quickly turned post-Christian. And so, if at the risk of boring you, in the 70s, let me back up. When World War II was over, there was a great expansion of Christianity. There was such a missions emphasis. There were churches planted all over the United States, and primarily the methods of evangelism were birthed out of the era that it was from. Like they're birthed out of modernity. Modernity at the core says knowledge comes from my ability to observe or think. And most of the evangelistic methods reflected that. And we lived in a very Christ haunted culture. So most of the gospel presentations just merely appealed to the will. So there was presuppositions that that people knew there was a heaven be one, a hell to be shunned. Jesus is the Son of God, co-equal with the Father. The Bible was this authoritative book. And so with these presuppositions, most gospel presentations address the will. So they didn't really talk about what you had to know or believe. They talked about just accept or just repent or you see what I'm saying? They're primarily focused on the will.
Yeah.
Well, when the Berlin Wall came down, so did modernity. And that was the tipping point of postmodernism, where people began to say, we don't know everything. And there's no possible way we can know everything. In fact, how do you even know what you're telling me is true? Well, as we began to travel and I began to have more and more gospel conversations, I just felt like I wanted to take another trip into academia and really sharpen my philosophical skills. Theology is this blend of revelation from God and philosophy, and it's organized in a means that makes sense, and we can impart it to others. And I just want to get better at those, the ability to engage with those around me.
And so why should Christians spend time studying apologetics in depth? Like, why should they understand it more than they already do?
So why should other Christians pursue apologetics? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, again, I think in Second Peter, he says we're to know. I was looking for a Bible nearby, but he he says that we need to know what's going on internally. We got to know the hope that lies within us, so that we can answer and give the answer of Christ to those that ask in a spirit of meekness and humility. And I just think that the ability to take somebody from saying they don't believe in God to talk about what is theism, to really the exclusivity of Christ, it's a tool that we all need. And you don't have to have a PhD in apologetics before you obey the commandments to go into the world and make disciples. But it does help to have some of those apologetic tools.
Okay. And so how is apologetics important in youth?
Say it again.
Why is apologetics important for like teenagers to understand?
Oh, I think teens are on the front lines of the cultural war. I mean, right now, in the areas of same-sex issues, areas of biblical authority, areas of um, exclusivity of Christ, most of our cultural drivers are just assuming that mom and dad are a little bit, well, they're conservative and they're just going to kind of stay in their ways. So what we need to do is we need to focus on the youth. And if you look at, what is going into teenagers' inbox in their head, I mean, the culture is driving for a cultural revolution. And so I think teens need to not just say, okay, I don't believe in that because my parents didn't, but they need to take it to the nth degree. I mean, what happens if if marriage no longer is man and woman? I mean, what happens if the Bible is not true? What happens if Jesus is not the only means of salvation? And I think teens need to be able to answer those questions.
And we kind of talked about that with the podcast Apologetics Simplified last year in October. And they kind of felt the same way because they said people kind of give teenagers a bad rap, and just trying to remember what exactly what they said. They just went, like you said, we're on the front lines of society, and it sounds kind of corny, but we're the future, and that's kind of what they talked about when we went on is don't be afraid to have encounters with atheists, homosexuals, and all that, because that's how Christianity is going to move forward, is having encounters like that. So, and what is your favorite go-to book for apologetics? They can be in a book in the Bible or a book like Tactics or something like that.
I do like Tactics a lot. I think that's just an entry level. I'm looking at some of my apologetic books right now. I actually, I find that, Tactics probably would be my favorite if you were saying I could only give one, but I feel like apologists they all have something to add, and whether it's evidential to presuppositional, they have something to, to share. So.
Mhm. And we actually had Greg Kokel on this podcast last year to talk about tactics. And I was wondering if you would like to share some of your favorite tactics, or if you had your own that you use.
Oh, I love what Greg's done. The 3 questions. What do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? Are you sane? I think it's just a great way to continue the conversation. I think those are great questions. And obviously you don't have to say it exactly that way. But it's just wonderful.
Yeah. And we actually had a great time with Greg, and I actually haven't had a chance to read the entire book. I had to kind of read the summary of it, but I actually learned a lot about um, encounters and kind of made it easier for me because I always freaked out about it, defending Christianity and all that. But I actually enjoyed reading what I got to read before we interviewed him. But and let and can you kind of like explain why you would choose tactics like more in depth, like why you like it?
Well, I just like it because I feel like it helps people deal with. I think the thing that Christians are afraid of is not being able to engage people that challenge them on the gospel.
Yeah.
So being able to, when someone says God's not true, or there's not a God, or why would a good God allow bad things to happen to good people, they're able to they're able to have a way to navigate those claims, and that's a real blessing.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for you. I'm glad you came on with us. I kind of regret not having more because I'm really enjoying this, but I'm glad you agreed to come on with us.
Oh, well, I just love what you're doing. I love that you got a heart for people, Andrew. And I just hope that your listeners will, as you continue this process, that you'll just continue to grow in your understanding how to run a podcast. I mean, these things are good things that you're doing. And so just continue to get good guests and reach out to people, and who knows how God will use this in the years to come.
Thank you. So I hope to see you in July at plant camp.
That sounds great. We love having you, Andrew.